Well, welcome. I'm trying this Twitter live stream again today. I thought I'd time to do a bit of my own live streaming. I've been helping Michael Bourne out with a couple of live streams, and it's hold on. I'll see where I got an audio duplicate here. Hate hearing myself, but anyways, okay. So what I'm going to do today is working on some CodeWars here. So CodeWars is a cool site that has a bunch of different challenges for you. And what you can do is choose your language and then choose a little code kata, which is a little practice, and you can go and solve it. And the coolest thing I like about it is when you're done, you get to see how everybody else solved it. It's one of those neat things where you may solve things a certain way. Your brain's used to working a certain way, and then you can see what other people do. And sometimes it'll give you an idea of maybe a functional way to do it that you don't normally do, or maybe using some language function that you wouldn't even think about. So I thought it'd be pretty neat to do that, and I thought I'd share them live as I do them, and you guys can see how I mess them up. So right now, JavaScript is usually the one I work on, but we're doing a big push on the CodeWars repo to get CFML added, because Cold Fusion CFML is the language I use the most, and JavaScript's right up there as well, obviously. But it'd be pretty cool if we could have Cold Fusion in here as well. So you follow me on Twitter, you probably will see that, or even on YouTube. I'm going to try and start doing more with CodeWars. So let's get into it. So as I said, there are a lot of languages here. Um, the big idea is that you basically practice and master your language of choice. So what you do is you pick a kata, and a kata is basically a test. It's a little problem you're trying to solve, and then what happens is as you work through it, you build up your level, your KYU, sort of your level, sort of like black belts and everything is based on I think it's a Japanese training system. So you earn ranks and honor as you go through and work your way up, and it's pretty cool because, as we said, you can see everybody else's comments on the solutions, and you can tag them as if you think they're clever or not. And eventually, you can create your own katas, and there's also leaderboards and everything too. So I'm going to jump into one here. So let's check this one out. So you can do a search and find a kata. So I've picked this one out. So today I'm going to do a 7 KYU, which is, not a very hard one. It's level 7. You start on level 8, but level 7, 21 people have started. Most people do get a satisfaction out of it. And so many people have actually completed it, and a lot of times some of them are very hard and you can't complete them. So it gives us the details. So basically what this is the school year is approaching, and students will be taking tests, and you need to grade them in different ways. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a tool that'll go and take your grades in your grading system and then come out with a total answer. So you'll basically get four things in your function. You'll get an array, so you get an array of numbers, and each number is the question. So a 0, a 1, or 2 can be those answers. So 0 is the correct answer, 1 is if they omitted the answer, and 2 is an incorrect answer. And then we have the scoring or the grading rubric, essentially. So this first number is the number of points we get for every correct answer. 0 is the number of points for every omitted answer, and this might be negative. And then this 1 would be the number of points deducted for incorrect answers. So this has to be reduced. So here we've got 5 correct answers, so 5 times 2, because that's the grade, is 10. 1 omitted answer, so 1 times 0 in this case is 0. And then 1 wrong, and they get 1 point for every 1 removed. So we have 10 plus 0 minus 1 equals 9. So the grade for this test would be 9. And so depending on this, you may have different grades, or there'll be different scoring mechanisms. So basically what we have to do is create a function to be able to create this. And we can go look at the comments on it, we can look at the solutions, but we don't want to cheat. So let's go and train. So I'm going to click train, and we'll see the interface here. So you get all the instructions right here, which is nice. You can see that as you're working. You can also see the output. So when you run your sample tests, they'll show up here. So the solution usually starts with a function, and this is the score test function, and this is basically has the parameters. Sometimes you get nothing up here, sometimes you get a function like this, and so the goal is that we're going to insert some code here, and then you'll see there's a couple of sample tests here. So we can actually write our code and run the sample test and see how our code does against it. And then when we think we're ready to attempt it, we'll click the attempt button, and what that does is it runs through all the big test cases. So here you have a couple of tests, and they have a lot more tests behind the scenes that check all the edge cases. There's a bunch of random tests usually, which that makes a good code card, is if you have structured tests for the edge cases and random tests for the randomness. And so basically here we're going to write code to get these tests to pass. So TDD style, usually what you want to do is try and get a test to pass, right? So if you do return, we'll just do empty string to start with and run out tests. We should get a couple of failures. Okay, so the first one, we expected 9 and they got nothing. And second expected 3 and got nothing. So if we just return 9, we'll get half our test to pass, right? Okay, so that's the cheating way to do it. Okay, so what we need to do is we basically need to figure out the number of correct answers, omitted answered, and incorrect answers. And then from that, we're going to calculate a points total. So we'll just start simple. So we'll do correct equals. Okay, so we have correct equals 0, var, and then we have omitted equals 0, and var incorrect equals 0. So obviously I'm used to writing var because I'm used to a lot of confusion, but we could do constant, we could do let, but I usually use var just to be consistent. It's that way I can write code for both. So I know a lot of people are going to say vars are bad, but that's what I'm doing right now. So okay, so now what we have to do is we have to go through this the string array, or I guess whatever it is. We need to figure out how many correct answers there are. So we could do this a couple ways. So we could do a for loop, and every time we find one, we could increment correct. That'd be one way to count them. We could also do something where we filter that array, and then we get the length of the array after we're filtered. Or we could do something like reduce, where we could go through and basically do a functional reduce on it, and then basically count all the questions that meet that criteria. So we could do that. Or the other option is to loop through, and depending on the answer, we could increment the right thing. So why don't we cheat and just do a simple setup here. So we'll do for var, and I'm probably going to get this wrong because I'm always mix my ColdFusion and my JavaScript together. But for score in, I guess it's score index because it's JavaScript. So for score in str, so we can do if str score index equals 0. Then we're going to do correct plus plus, and if it's equal to 1, then we'll do omitted plus plus. If it's incorrect, we'll do incorrect plus plus. So we'll loop through everything in there, looking at that number in the array, check to see what it is, and increment the right one. So that's just one way to do it. And then at the end, we're going to return the correct times the right plus the omit So we're going to do omitted. I spelled that wrong. And that might be negative, so that might work. And then we're going to subtract the incorrect times wrong. And obviously I'm using parentheses because we want the multiplication, everything to work first. Although it does that automatically anyway, because that's the way that works. But I like to be very clear with this here. So if I did it right, it should compile, and it should give us correct answers. Let's see. Oh my gosh, it didn't break on me. That's kind of crazy, to be honest. Not sure how to feel about that. So let's actually attempt this, and we'll see if everything passes. And then we can look at different ways to do this. So what I'd probably normally do is actually run a reduce. But in the reduce, you'd have to loop over the array 3 times. So this is probably a little more efficient, actually. So let's run this attempt here. So this is going to submit our attempt. It's not the most elegant. It's not the CodeGolf winner, but it does the job. Let's see if it passes all the tests. It looks like it passed all the tests. So I can submit my final test over here. And now I can see some other solutions. Okay. So in here, interesting. So they have an option here, and right now it's sorting by best practices. So this takes in the certain feedback. We have a grade, so right, omit, wrong, which is the same as up here. And then they're doing a return string.reduce function, sum and score. And then here they're going to return the sum plus the grades of the score. So because they put them in an array, they're going to actually use the 0, 1, and 2 as the index on it. So by putting the 0, 1, or 2 in here, they're essentially grabbing that score for each one, and they're just summing it together and returning it. And the 0 is the starting amount. So this is a reduce function. Pretty nice. So I like this one. It's clever, so I'm going to mark it as clever. Best practice? Maybe not. Now this is where you get to CodeGolf. And so what you're doing here, they're actually using a constant score test. So instead of doing the normal function score test in the inputs, they're doing string, and then they're using a spread for ... vals, and they're basically making those values into an array. And then they're doing the string.reduce, and then you've got the same thing going on here. So A instead of sum, and V instead of score. And they're doing A plus the vowels of V, so they're basically doing this here, but they're using letters, so short as possible they could. And then times, and then here they have the 1, 1, minus 1 of the V. So this one, I think we could even do better than this, because you could rewrite this with short letters and probably get it even better. So they could do ... A for array, and then here we could have S for sum, V for value, and we could do the same approach. So, I don't like this one very much. And see, this actually people made some comments. So here, shouldn't the reduce be slower than a regular for loop? And so they're saying yes, it is slower, but therefore, low-level counterparts. So I like the fact that they have a conversation. You can go in there and, want to explain stuff, or people have some problems with it. And sometimes you got some really interesting answers there. So here, this is sort of what we had as well. It's just a little different. So they got the old school for loop where you set a var and then you go through the length of the array loop. So this is an old school for loop, and then they have if with a curly braces, else if, etc. So I just did single line ifs because without the curly braces to save a few characters. But I think something like this is pretty neat. So using a ternary operator in here as well, actually multiple ternary operators. So it's pretty clever. Not very good practice though. So sometimes being super clever is not a good, best practice. So, but anyway, we can see all these different options. So it's kind of neat. Again, this one here, that looks pretty much what ours was, except for they just did sum plus right. Which, interesting. I just did plus plus, but makes sense. Cool, cool. So anyway, so that's a code kata for the day. I'm gonna try and do one a day just to get back into the habit because I love Code Wars, but I usually do everything on my JavaScript groups account, so I don't actually have very points here. So I'm only level 7. I've only got 57 points, so maybe I'll try and get that number up a little higher so we can do a little more in the community. So anyway, I hope you guys had fun watching, and yeah, maybe you guys should go try Code Wars out. And if you look at, let's see my profile here, G picking. You can see the number of completed, the number of achievements. You can find out a little more about me, and then we can actually set up. You can follow people and see how they're doing, etc. So you can see which katas I've actually worked on. I think. Yep. So these are the ones I've done. Some of them pretty good. There's a couple I haven't finished. One I started the other day. I was messing with. Some of these I'm just looking at just to see how they're set up. So I should probably go finish some of these. But yeah. So anyway, I hope you guys had fun, and yeah, keep an eye out for next live stream. Later.